Welcome everyone. This is another video in our AWS S3 series. So in our last video, we discussed about S3 introduction and then we talked about S3 bucket creation, uploading objects within the S3 bucket using AWS console. So now we would be discussing about how to create the buckets using AWS CLI or using command line interface, right? So without wasting time, let's get started. So let me give you a small brief what we discussed in our previous video. So in our last video, we learned how to create bucket. So it's just like, in order to create the bucket, you just have to go to the search bar, type S3, enter, and then it will list you all the buckets that you have in your account. And it will, along with that, it would show you what region these buckets belong to. All right. So now let's jump right into my Visual Studio Code, and this is where I would be setting it up. Okay, so in order to have that communication, let me give you an example. How will we communicate using command line to AWS? So consider this is your laptop. Okay, this is your laptop, and that is your AWS cloud. Okay, so how am I as I mentioned, I will be creating the buckets in AWS account using command line. So there has to be some sort of communication established and communication established between your laptop and AWS account, right? So how will we do that? We do it using a command called AWS configure. So this command basically what it does, it basically stores our credentials, right? It basically stores our credentials and authenticate us to the AWS APIs. It authenticates as well as authorize us to the AWS APIs. So that is how it happens. So what I'm going to do now, I will be setting up the credentials, right? I will be setting up the credentials in my local machine, setting up the credentials in my local machine, or local laptop. Then once I would do this AWS configure, then it would ask you to enter a access key and a secure access key. Access key and secure access key. Okay, so where will I find that access key and secure access key? So for this, I have to go to in an AWS service called IAM, Identity and Access Management, right? So this is where I will create a user. What I will do here, I will create a user. I'll create a user. Okay, and then I will generate the access keys for this user. Generate access keys for the users, for this user, right? So how the flow is going to be? First flow is creating a user, create user in IAM, create user. Then second step is generate access keys. Access keys, right? And then third step is use these access keys in AWS configure. AWS configure, which is in my terminal or in my command line interface. That is what we are supposed to do. And once it is done, then we will be running all that AWS S3 commands, or we would be managing S3 using management of S3 using command line CLI. Okay, so these are the 4 steps that we are going to perform in this video. And if somebody has missed my previous videos, kindly do watch these videos. One is for S3 introduction and second one is for creating S3 bucket. So that will give you the complete idea about what we are doing within this AWS S3 series. All right, so without wasting time, let's get in here. So there is one thing I missed here. So when I configure this AWS configure, right? So what it does, it basically creates a .aws directory within your home directory, right? .aws. If I say .aws, so in Linux, .aws stands for a hidden directory, or in Windows as well. Like dot, whenever you have a dot inside of any directory, that file or that directory considered to be a hidden directory. All right. So the moment I will configure, the moment I would be completed, I would have this setup completed, then this directory would be created, and then you will have all that you will have to perform all that steps. Okay, so let's move on. So let me see if I already have this .aws directory created or my AWS configured or not. So let's check that. AWS tilde stands for your home directory. Then .aws. Yeah, it's already there. So what I'll do, I'll just take it off from here. rm minus rf tilde dot and one second. So let's see if this commands, if I can run CLI commands in my terminal when I have this .aws directory present. That means my AWS configure is done in this laptop. Okay. So let's see AWS S3 LS. If I do, it has listed all my buckets which are currently existing in my AWS account. So we will start it all over. I will remove this .aws directory from here, and then we will start with AWS configure. rm minus rf delete. So now I do not have this .aws directory anymore. All right. And let's see if I run this AWS S3 LS again, it should not give me any results. Okay. Yeah. So it says unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by running AWS configure command. Okay. So now let's go back here and let's see what is the first step that we have to do. So first we will be creating a user inside our IAM, right? So for that, what I'll do, I'll go here and I'll search IAM here. Okay. And in IAM, I will go to this users options. Then I will click on create users and I will create a user called AWS demo S3. This is my username. Okay. Then I will click on next and now I will give the permissions to this user. So for now, I will grant him administrator access just for this video. However, we can create policies that will have fine-grained access so that the particular user who is consumed that policy will only have access to the S3 bucket or S3 bucket management or S3 bucket administration. But since fine-grained policies or AWS IAM policies are not the part of this video, hence we have chosen administrator access, which will have complete access to this AWS account. So this user can create anything and everything within this AWS account. Okay, so let's click on create user. So here this AWS demo user S3 is created. So all I need to do, just click on it. And then I will go to the security credentials. So this is the second step that we are performing. Let me generate access keys. So this is the second step. Okay. And then scroll it down, go up to this access keys, right? And then click on create access keys, command line interface, and then confirmation, the next, and then create access keys. So these are my access keys. This is the access key and this is the secret access key. Okay. So I'll just open it up. All right. So now this is how we have generated our access keys. Now see what is the third step. Use this access key in AWS configure in my terminal. So now go back to the terminal and I will run AWS configure. This is the command that I have to execute for configuring my credentials. All right. Click on AWS configure. I think I misspelled it. AWS configure, enter. Okay, so now I have to put the access key ID. So what is the access key ID? That is here. I just copied it and pasted over here. Enter. And then secret access key, paste, enter. Default region, I'll just go with AP-South 1. That is the Mumbai region that we have. So now your AWS S3 is configured. So now let's verify that if we have this .aws directory created or not. Okay. So now go back to ls, your home directory, then .aws. It is there. And now we have our config and credentials. These two files are created. So now let's see what is inside these two files. So I'll do cat. And if I do config, if I get inside this config file, I see it has that region specified, the default region which we specified when we were configuring the credentials using AWS configure, right? So it's there, like in the config file, you will have this region specified. And similarly, let's see what is inside this credentials file. So this credentials file is containing your access key ID and secret access key. Okay. So now let's see, does it work for me? AWS S3 LS. Yes, it's working now. So now I have successfully made the connection between my laptop and AWS. And in the same time, I can authenticate as well as authorize. Auth and authorize. Right? I can authenticate as well as authorize to the AWS APIs. So that is why I am able to list down all the buckets that I have. Okay, since I have got the administrator access. So now let's run the first command. So first command is AWS S3 API create bucket. So before I move further, there are endpoints of S3. So basically there are two endpoints. One is the default endpoint and second is the regional specific endpoint. Okay. So what is the default endpoint? So default endpoint name is s3.amazonaws.com. So whenever you run a command called AWS S3 make bucket MB, so that is when your call is being made against the default endpoint, right? That's when your call is being made to the default endpoint. Okay. But when I have to make a regional specific call, so when I use S3 API, this command S3, when I use S3 API, so that is when what it does, it goes to the regional endpoints. Okay. So let's go with this AWS S3 API at this point in time. So let me copy this command. And then I will just modify it as per my requirement. So as I mentioned that, this bucket name has to be unique. So I'll just give it a unique name. Demo S3 or something. Okay. Create bucket configuration location constraint. My region is going to be AP South 1. AP South 1. So now by using this command, Control C. So here is my bucket name. Here, you see, this is the bucket name. WQER demo S3. All right. Enter. All right. So this bucket has been created. You see, this is the endpoint. This is my buckets endpoint that we discussed other day, right? In my first video. So it has HTTP prefixed. Okay. So if I want to validate whether this bucket has been created or not. So what I can do, I can run the command called AWS S3 ls. Let's see if this is there or not. It is here, right? And in that same time, I can validate it inside my console. Just refresh it. Here you go. Just create it. Okay. So this is how you create the buckets using AWS CLI. Now I want to upload some files. Okay. So how will I upload the files? So in order to upload the files, I will use the command called AWS S3 copy and then my file name and then the bucket URL. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, let's see what I have here. ls. I have, these many folders. Let's create one file here. Let's say S3 demo file. I'm creating here S3 dash demo dot txt. Okay, I'll just type some content here. This is my S3 bucket demo. Then I will just save it and come out of it. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to upload this file to my S3 bucket that I just created. So my bucket name this is my bucket name, which I just created. Okay, so now let's modify our this command AWS S3 CP and my file name is going to be S3 hyphen demo dot txt then S3 colon slash slash my bucket name. Okay, so now let's try to execute it and see what happens. Upload, right? It has uploaded this file. Now validate it. How can I validate it? I'll just go back to here. This is the bucket that I created. Just see, it has just uploaded, right? 12:26. Time here is 12:26. Okay. So if I want to see this file, just open it. This is my S3 bucket demo, right? Yeah. So now if I want to delete this one, all I need to do, see, there is one point I would like to highlight here. You cannot delete the bucket until your bucket is empty, right? So you have to make your bucket empty before you delete it. All right. So there are commands. So what I can do, there is a command called AWS S3 RB remove bucket and then give the name of your bucket in this format. S3 will be prefixed and right now I don't have my bucket empty. Okay, I have one file that is s3demo.txt inside that bucket. So let's see if what happens if I do this. So it gave me error. The bucket you tried to delete is not empty. So what does that mean? That I have to make my bucket empty before I delete it. Okay. So in order to delete it, there is a one option that I can apply slash dash dash force. If I do so, then it would recursively delete the bucket. What does that mean? That it will delete all the content first, then it will delete the bucket itself. Enter and see. First, it has deleted this contact like content what it had s3 demo.txt. Then it had deleted the bucket. So now let's validate whether the bucket has been deleted or not. AWS S3 ls. Do you see this bucket anymore? No. And same thing we can do here as well. It's showing here. Let's refresh it once. Yeah, it's gone. So that's all what we had in this video. Kindly do subscribe this channel and share your feedback in the comment section. Keep watching this and I would be coming up with I would be bringing a new video within this S3 series. So thanks for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.